Yeah.
So yeah, it was great to finally connect with you today. I'm
No,
hoping to speak to you a little bit more about Zen99 and what you guys are up to. Seems like you guys started maybe a little while ago and really trying to help a lot of self-employed
yeah.
people as I've come to gather. So not just drivers, but just self-employed workers in general, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, just tell me a little bit more about Zen99. When did it start, and what are you guys doing?
Yeah, definitely. So a little background on me quickly. My name's Tristan, obviously CEO and co-founder of Zen99. Previously, I was a CPA at Deloitte, one of the big four accounting firms, and then led the operations team at Exec, which was an on-demand errand running startup, kind of Uber and TaskRabbit mix back in 2012 is when it started. Started Zen99 about 7 months ago, really just after seeing that independent contractors don't get a lot of help with these traditional HR type services. So, things like having money withheld for taxes or having health insurance figured out for them. Things like that that are pretty much needs and must-haves for contractors, things they're legally required to do. But quite honestly, are very complex, and a lot of people don't understand how to do them. So it's an opportunity with Zen99. The main two things we do, and two of our main goals are one, helping people really maximize their take-home earnings. So the easiest way around that is helping them identify expenses they don't know they can write off. So a very common one with rideshare drivers they don't know about is their cell phone. So a lot of rideshare drivers on Lyft, et cetera, they use their personal cell phone for both personal use and Lyft business use. When they're running that GPS, when they're running the Lyft app, passengers, et cetera, that's all business use. That's something they can write off as an expense. Writing off these expenses basically means more money in your pocket instead of the government's pocket. So it's literally saving you money.
Oh, great. Is
Yeah,
it
exactly. So that's the first area is maximizing take-home earnings. The second area is helping people stay out of trouble with the IRS. So, for example, if you're an independent contractor and you earned over $5,000 in 2014, today's January 14th, tomorrow you probably have a quarterly estimated tax payment due. A lot of people don't know that. So we're really trying to build this system where we help, hey, you have this deadline coming up. We're going to help take you through the process of filing that so that you don't get hit with penalties and fines.
okay, great. Is there something else that a lot of rideshare drivers miss out on in terms of deductions? Like what's another common one?
Yeah, I mean the biggest one is really car expenses. Obviously, you're out there driving. That is first and foremost your biggest expense. And so there's a lot of confusion between how you write off those car expenses. So a very common mistake is people will use what's called the standard mileage rate, but then they'll also write off gas receipts on top of that. That's basically double counting your gas expenses because the standard mileage rate already includes it. So that's a very common mistake people make. In general, it tends to make a lot more sense for rideshare drivers to use the standard mileage rate. A lot easier in terms of tracking, ends up resulting in a bigger deduction most times. So really encourage people to do that. Non-professional advice, of course, but just my personal opinion.
Right.
So that's another
Um,
common one. Some other common expenses you might not think about are things like you can write off 50% of snacks and water that you're providing to passengers. That's basically a client meal, and so you can write off 50% of that expense. Just another example.
wow, that's very interesting. Okay, so I guess tell me a little bit more about, I guess, the platform that you're building on Zen99. So how do we as self-employed workers use it, and how does that interact with us?
Yeah, definitely. So like I said, we started about 7 months ago, so we don't even have the product exactly where we the end vision, which is something that's very, very simple, very, very automated, minimal work required. No one really wants to think about taxes and insurance and things like that. So how do we get it to a stage where you don't have to think about it? You do a one-time setup, and we're basically doing it all for you. So that's the end goal. Where it's at today is we're a great way to keep organized. So the IRS requires you to keep receipts, track of mileage, things like that throughout the year. So we're a really good resource for helping you stay organized. Also a good resource for helping you know how much you should be saving for taxes. So, you can go in there weekly, see, I should have this much in a savings account, put aside for taxes since I'm going to have to pay that. And things like, right now it's still open enrollment. It's open enrollment for another month. February 15th, this is the final day that people can enroll in individual health plans for 2015. And so we help simplify the insurance options, help people figure out if they qualify for a subsidy through the Affordable Care Act, and then help them compare low-cost plans. So those are all things we do today right now, as well as helping people file quarterly taxes, as I mentioned earlier.
I see. And I guess, just because of the new year and the first at least 15 days of the year, what are people using most on your website right now?
We have had a huge surge in users the last 2 weeks as people, one, remember they have to pay quarterly taxes, or two, even just realize for the first time they have to pay quarterly taxes. It's nice we're in this 4 month period where taxes are on people's minds, and so it's a really good opportunity for us to say, hey, we're a really great resource for tracking all of that. We'll help you figure out 2014, but we're also going to help you get set up for 2015 with best practices for the year.
Right. So that's what I'm trying to do on my website as well, is to write a whole bunch of these articles now and, getting people better, acclimated to, the whole tax situation so that they can have a much better 2015 rather than trying to scramble now to make up for some lost time.
Absolutely. There's going to be a lot of people who are new to rideshare. A lot of my current Uber and Lyft drivers that I've been with the last 2 months, started, 3 to 6 months ago. So they haven't been through a tax cycle yet. So a lot of people who weren't keeping track of receipts or keeping track of mileage are gonna have some headaches this tax season. And I think we really want to, set themselves up with best practices for this year.
Right. Yeah, I was lucky to start last December. Luckily, I don't think I even got paid until January, so technically I didn't even have to pay for taxes like what you had mentioned about the cash basis accounting method. So I didn't have to pay tax on it, but I just figured, I might as well pay it. I don't know if that's gonna screw my taxes up this year. But then I had to find out all of these questions last year. Do I have to pay all these taxes? What's my mileage? And luckily, I only made a couple $100 in December, so it wasn't a big deal. So I just put that on my taxes, not worried about the mileage. And then I was like, okay, well, this year I'll write it all down, and I did. So.
Absolutely. Well, your headache is going to be far less severe than it was last year, or for people who are just realizing it now.
Well, you think so, but now I actually just figured, I did a post a couple days ago, and I think I talked to you about that I forgot about my state taxes.
Yep.
So,
that is something people figure out about.
Yeah, I mean, I was like so focused on the federal estimated tax, I completely forgot about state tax. I'm like, oh gosh, so I just paid that yesterday, and then today I have to go in and pay my federal too. So.
That's right. I mean, like I said, this is a real pain point for contractors. It's great being a contractor. You get more flexibility, you get more autonomy, you get more control. But there are some additional responsibilities with that. So that's really where we saw the opportunity in terms of how do we automate these responsibilities and kind of be the resource for them.
Okay, so yeah, I guess going back to your website and the service that you're building. So what is the easiest way for drivers to, submit their information to Zen99 so they can organize it and, for them to spit out that little number on the upper right-hand corner that tells them how much they owe in taxes?
Yeah, definitely. So the easiest way is through our new bank account integration, which we launched about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So now if you're banking with a major bank, you can connect your bank account. We'll pull in all the transactions that go through there. It's very safe, bank level security. It's read-only data, so we and you can't trigger move money in or out of Zen99 through that. But it's really nice because instead of having to manually upload, amount every time you get paid, instead it's just coming through your bank account. You click mark as earning. You say, it's for Uber, and you're done. And so it allows us to get, closer to this whole automation that I was talking about, where it's very hands-off, and we can start doing it for people. So that's the easiest way. Some people aren't comfortable with that still, which is understandable. So we still do allow people to upload manually. So that's through our website. Our website's also mobile optimized, so it looks very nice on mobile device if you're using Safari on your iPhone or anything. And apps are coming soon as well.
Oh, great. Is there a way to upload from a spreadsheet, a kind of those bulk upload kind of deals?
We've gotten not that many requests for that, so it's something we have on the to-do list, but it's a little deprioritized over these things like add additional bank account integrations. We've gotten some really good traction on that feature. So we're making sure we're putting our resources where they matter most.
Right. And then, and you mentioned earlier that, you also help drivers track their expenses. So, again, what is the easiest way to do that? Are you integrated with any of the credit card companies today, or are you working on that?
So same thing, the bank account integration actually includes both earnings and expenses. So if you're using the same bank account, paying with your debit card, that's all going to come through. It also does things if you use like a Chase credit card or an American Express credit card, you can pull that information in. One click mark as an expense, same idea. The earnings and expenses should really be thought about together, particularly because expenses have such a big impact on your taxes. And that's really where we're trying to say, hey, if you're keeping track of your expenses, you're going to save hundreds or thousands of dollars every year. That's yours to spend instead of you having to pay it to the government.
Right. So I guess can you list maybe some other common expense deductions that we could do in addition to that standard mileage, in addition to the cell phone and the food?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, the biggest one is going to be car expenses. So that is above and beyond the biggest expense rideshare drivers have. The food's another good one. The cell phone's another good one, as we discussed. There's some other smaller ones, like for example, you can write off the interest portion if you're financing your car. You can't write off the actual lease payments, but you can write off the interest portion of that. Other things, I mean, there's some other tricky things. You can get to some complex tax strategies, like one question we get a lot is, can I write off the entire cost of my car if I bought it this year? That requires a little more explanation. It's actually called a Section 179 deduction, which is nice because you get that big deduction in this year, but causes a lot of issues down the line because one, it means you can't use the standard mileage rate anymore. So if you do that, you have to forever start tracking every gas receipt, every insurance bill, every registration bill, every oil change, and calculate your car expenses that way, which is a nightmare. It also does this thing called depreciation recapture, which basically, if you don't use your car for the entire 5-year IRS period, let's say you sold it in year 3 or something like that, all of a sudden that expense you wrote off becomes income on your taxes. So all of a sudden that year you have, $20,000 in quote unquote income that isn't actually cash income, but you still have to pay taxes on it. So,
Right.
anyway, little bit of a sidebar into these questions that we get, and people trying to get into more complicated tax strategies. A lot of times they just aren't worth it for individual contractors who are rideshare drivers.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, I guess if we are using the standard mileage, you mentioned car expenses. So what kind of car expenses could we deduct when using the standard mileage?
Yeah, so the standard mileage rate it's an IRS set rate, so it's 56 cents per business mile in 2014. I believe it's 57.5 cents in 2015.
Yep.
That basically is the IRS saying, hey, we're going to make it very easy for you. We've calculated that's the expense you get to write off as a car, and that includes gas, depreciation on your car, any maintenance and repairs, insurance, registration, basically any costs associated with having a car. The things that aren't included are parking and tolls. Parking is not very relevant for rideshare drivers because you're not really parking. It has to have a business purpose. Getting lunch isn't really a business purpose, unfortunately. Tolls is a relevant one, though. If you're driving, from an area of work and you're driving across the bridge, you have to pay a toll to go pick up more passengers, and you can write that off as a business expense. So, but the standard mileage rate is far easier. It encapsulates all these other car expenses. The second method, that's the one method, standard mileage rate. The other method is called the actual cost method, and that's where you keep track of every gas receipt, every insurance bill, etc. It's a lot of tracking, a lot of work.
Right. Okay, so I guess we can back off a little bit off on the taxes. I know that we were gonna maybe try to make another video, kind of discussing a little bit more detail about taxes and stuff. So
Sure.
I guess, how do you, in what ways do you help out other self-employed workers? I don't know, I forget what different type of services, or what services of self-employed workers that you cover. So can you give us a little more background about, what other type of workers you try to help?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a whole wide range of workers. So a lot of rideshare drivers, a lot of people in these delivery services like Instacart, Deliv, others like that. We had a lot of web developers, a lot of creative services, so designers, photographers, like I said, web developers, etc. It's really, once you start thinking about contractors, it's crazy all the ones you forget about. You don't think about yoga teachers, gym trainers, those are all contractors. A lot of the film and music industry is 1099 income. Airbnb is all 1099 income. Even eBay, selling things on eBay and Etsy, that's all 1099 income as well. So really, right now, we're building the foundations that we can go to all these other bodies of contractors and say, hey, you have to do your taxes too. The tax forms that you're filling out are the same as the one an Uber driver is filling out. So we've already built that foundation, and it's more just tailoring some of the expenses and such to help them, really maximize their expense write-offs.
So I guess, how did Zen99 start? Did you focus purely on rideshare drivers, or did you kind of focus on like Airbnb or some other type of self-employed workers, and then kind of fell into finding all these like potentially hundreds of thousands of rideshare drivers?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I used to run the operations team at Exec, and so I'm very in tune and in touch with this whole 1099 economy. So it was always an area we were going after initially, just because it does have so much press around it. It is growing so fast. People in it are typically first-time contractors, so there's a lot of education that we can do with them, and kind of build trust with them in the longer-term connection. So that's always been a focus of ours. When you get into other areas like Airbnb or Etsy, there's some more complicated tax things there. So Airbnb, for example, has some complex hotel tax laws coming out city by city. eBay and Etsy are a little harder because you have to deal with inventory, so you need some more advanced accounting there. So really focus on anyone who's a service provider right now. So rideshare drivers fits perfectly into that. Web developers perfectly into that.
Yeah, so I guess kind of speaking about eBay a little bit. A lot of people do a lot of their business through PayPal. So, and I remember that they also did send out 1099s and things like that. But I guess short of that, they really don't have anything else in terms of helping them for taxes, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. PayPal is basically just another bank account for them. Is the best way to think about that. So they have earnings sitting in their bank account. That's an earning for them that they owe taxes on.
Oh, I see. Okay. So I guess, looking forward into Zen99, what are you thinking about implementing? Like what other additions are you planning other than, additional bank account integration and things like that? So what's the next hot thing that you guys are working on?
Absolutely. We keep that under wraps a little bit. There's a lot of competition coming to this space as people realize it is a big opportunity. I will say that whenever we decide what we want to prioritize as a product, we make sure that it's a macro feature. So really something that's going to be a big useful feature for users. And it's always got an eye for making the product simpler and more automated. Like I mentioned, people don't want to think about taxes, so the more we can minimize that and just do the work for them, the better.
Okay, great. Well, it seems all really exciting, and I did try out the software a couple days ago. I entered in a lot of the statements that I had from the last quarter, and trying to manage all of that, and it came out pretty close to what I calculated both in TurboTax and also my form. So that was really cool to see.
Yeah,
Yeah,
perfect.
unfortunately, you don't support the bank that I use though, unfortunately. So I
Yeah, it's all
stopped using Bank of America for all of my Lyft stuff. I transferred it to another bank account. So
right.
for the quarter that I had, I only had like one transaction on there. I'm like, oh wow.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that's definitely in our pipeline is expanding the banks that have coverage.
Cool. All right, well, it was great to chat with you today, and I'm really excited to see what else you guys have in store for us. I'm hoping you guys also help us drivers out a little bit throughout this tax season. It's going to be definitely a long one for sure. Now that the
Absolutely.
estimated taxes is almost over, as of maybe another 20 some hours or so. But
Yeah,
yeah, so I'm hoping that you guys pump up some more tools for us and to gear us into 2015 as well.
absolutely. We're looking forward to it.
All right, thanks.
Perfect. Yeah,
Bye
great
now.
chatting. Simon.